So just remember him. It's good to have everybody here tonight. Tonight our testimony is going to be from Brother Clint. So you come on up and yeah, make him feel welcome. Yeah. And I don't know if you remember him or not, but he's the one when he did cardboard testimonies, he held it and said he was called to preach. Y'all remember that?
You going to remind him of that?
That's right, man. So anyway, you take it on, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, everybody. First of all, just get this out of the way. I'm going to turn really, really red. So nobody call the ambulance. It's not an emergency. Promise you that. I'm very, very excited to be here tonight. It's an honor to be here. I love Pastor Casey. I love coming to this church. If you can't tell, I run pretty deep over here. This is my entourage. These are all the boys from Teen Challenge. And I'm excited tonight, mainly because I get to share what God's done in my life. But I get to share it with you all. And for a lot of these guys, it's the first time they've heard my testimony too. So I'm really excited to share it. I'm 29 years old. I'm from Waynesville, North Carolina, up in the mountains. And I grew up in a Christian home, had great parents, godly grandparents, really, just a normal upbringing. At a pretty early age, I was introduced to church. I got saved when I was 7 years old. I saw my brother and my dad stand up at the front of the church, and I thought, well, I guess since they're up there, I better go up there. So I had no idea what I was doing, but I followed the crowd and went on up there. And that kind of started a pattern in my life, following the crowd. At 9 years old, I was raised in a baseball family. So at 9 years old, we started playing traveling baseball. And if anybody knows anything about traveling sports, it takes a lot of time away from church. And started doing that. My parents were just trying to do the best thing for me. They didn't know, that was pulling me away from God. I mean, it was way too young for anybody to know it. But the thing about it was, the fact that I was a good kid wasn't going to be able to sustain me for the trials that were coming up. The fact that I was a good kid wasn't going to carry me through the hard times of my teenage years and college years. If I would have stayed in church, if I had that to lean on, then maybe I would have not made the decisions that I made. But getting out of church at an early age kind of made me start depending on myself instead of depending on God. And went through high school, never had any problems. Again, I was a good kid. Had an older brother. He took care of me. He looked after me. He made sure I minded my P's and Q's. I had a fear of God when I was growing up. A fear of God. I had a fear of two fathers, my father and God the Father. And I knew that their morals were lined up. So I stayed in a good lane. So I went to college, and I had started to make some pretty poor decisions in high school. I had started hanging out with the wrong crowd. I had started drinking here and there, and started getting involved with women that I shouldn't have been involved with. But I was still focused. I was still dedicated. I knew I wanted to get my degree. I knew I wanted to play ball, and God let me have all of those things. I went to Western Carolina University. I walked onto the baseball team. I was enjoying life. I was making good grades. I was doing everything I was supposed to do. But I was making these small allowances, making these small church hardly decisions, adult decisions, and I continued to drink more heavily. I continued to experiment with things that I didn't have any business experimenting with. And my sophomore year, we were playing at Auburn, and a bang-bang play at first base. I went up for the ball, and a guy ran into the back of my knee and tore my knee up. And despite hard attempts at rehab and coming back, I wasn't going to be playing baseball anymore. And those letdowns, being a good kid, that wasn't going to sustain me through. I didn't have God. I didn't have anything to lean on. I didn't know where to turn when my life started falling apart. So I started making more compromises. And with that injury, I got introduced to pain pills. And my life started taking a completely different turn. I kept some of the drive that I had originally. I finished school, I got my degree, I went to work. But it wasn't what I wanted to do or what I thought I deserved. I thought I deserved everything to do things that I dreamed of my whole life, when really I had living the way I should have been. Depend on those. I had a good job. I was making good money. I was far away from my family. We really weren't communicating very much. Not on bad terms, but they didn't know what was going on in my life. I wasn't letting anybody in. My older brother, I pushed him away too. We started getting farther apart. I went to work every day, but I went to work every day not for a purpose of being a better person, being a better Christian, or being able to sustain myself. I was going to work every day to sustain my habit. And it got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. I would get paid on Friday, I would be broke on Saturday. I had to get my medicine somehow. I was selfish. I had a world view. I couldn't see past my addiction. The only thing I could see was my next high. The only thing I could see was getting my next fix. And I was going to do anything I could to get that. I wasn't going to be sick. That was my mentality. I don't care who I hurt. I don't care who I steal from. I don't care what I have to do. I'm going to get what I need to get up and go to work the next day. That's an awful life to live. That's an awful life to live. To go to bed at night worried about how I'm going to get high tomorrow, and to wake up every morning worried about how I'm going to get through my day. It's a jail. It's a prison. It's miserable. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But see, I wasn't man enough to come to your house and take what you had. I wasn't man enough to do that. I was going to pick, and I was going to plead, and I was going to beg the people that loved me, the people that wanted to help me, the people that were enabling me, but they had no idea. They were just trying to get me through. They were doing whatever they could to help me, and I was robbing them blind. In 6 years, I went from being a college athlete to being a helpless, hopeless drug addict with no future, no money, no plan, but just to get high. And that's all I cared about. Everything I'd built for, or driven for my whole life, I just threw it away. I didn't care about that anymore. To be honest with you, I didn't want to wake up the next day. I didn't want to. But I wasn't man enough to take my own life either. Mainly because I knew that was a coward's way out. But I was being a coward here on earth, so what's the difference, right? Well, it came to the point where there was no more power tools to steal. There was no more money in my grandmother's bank account for me to go beg her for any more money. So I just got more and more brazen with how I got my money for my drugs. And I impersonated my father. I knew his social security number. I knew all his information. Called his bank, got his PIN number changed, took his debit card out of his wallet, and I went on a run. And it was a run, I'll tell you that. I went to the ATM on a Sunday morning to go get more money for more drugs, and there was no more money. So what do I do now? I've robbed everybody. I've taken everything from everybody I love, everybody I know. My friends won't talk to me. They all know what I'm doing. My brother, if he sees me, I'm probably not walking away from that conversation. I mean, I'm to my wit's end. I don't know what else to do. And I was tired. I was so tired of doing that all the time. I was tired of hurting everybody. So I went to my dad and I told him, I said, Dad, you're broke. He said, I know. I've been pouring money into you for a long time. I know I'm broke. I said, no, you really broke. I said, I know you got bills to pay next week. You ain't going to be able to pay them. And I had to sit there and tell my father that I drained his bank account. I took everything that he worked so hard for. He's 60 years old. He can't retire because he's paying for my habit. My family's living in a garage apartment. They had to sell their house. Some other decisions were made that weren't so great, but a big part of it was me. My family's miserable. They're hurting. They're to the point where they just want to get rid of me, but they won't. They won't. They keep praying. They keep feeding into me. So that Sunday I told him, I said, you're broke. I took everything you had. Call the sheriff. The sheriff was a good friend of ours. I coached his son in travel and baseball a few years earlier before it got really, really bad. So a sheriff's deputy came to the house, put me in handcuffs, and took me to jail. I was high when I went into jail. I sat in that holding cell for about 6 hours. Knock on the cell, they open it up. I'm thinking, dang, that was quick. They already let me out. No. But the sheriff came to see me on a Sunday, on his day off. Came to see me, he handed me a pamphlet for Teen Challenge. And he said, we're going to turn this around. We're going to fix this. And no matter how much I pleaded and how much I begged, my parents left my butt in that jail cell for as long as it took. They weren't coming to pick me up. They'd had enough. They'd had enough. So I had to make a decision while I was in there. Am I going to bide my time, get through this, get out, and go right back out there, or I'm going to make something productive out of it? I was sick as a dog, in the dirtiest, nastiest place I've ever been in my life. But I got through it. God got me through it. And as mad as I was, see, I still had this twisted view. I still had all this pride in my heart. I had all this pride, and I was blaming everybody else for my situation. I was still just twisted in my head. And then I finally opened up to Hebrews chapter 12, and I read where God disciplines his children. I said, God, why am I here? I had so much promise for my life. I had so much hope for my life. And now I'm here. It's a dead end. I'm going nowhere. I read how God will let us go places that aren't so good for us so we can see how much we need him and how much we have to depend on him. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. Not at that point. I wasn't totally dependent on God. I got out of jail. I had 12 felonies. 12 felonies. 6 counts of theft of financial cards, 6 counts of identity theft. And God got me out of that. Didn't have a criminal record. I ended up with 2 misdemeanors. It's a miracle. A miracle. And when I left that courtroom and I checked out of jail, my mom picked me up. She was there. And I thought I was going home. She dropped me off at the homeless shelter. And I thank God she dropped me off at that homeless shelter. There's love and there's tough love. And I'd rather have tough love any day of the week. They did everything they could to get me out of there, to get me out of that hole. But without them knowing it, they were enabling me every step of the way. Then finally they were like, you know what? God's got this. Let God help him figure it out, because we've done enough. And they put it in God's hands. And they sobered me up. I got a job. God provided me with a job while I was in that homeless shelter. I was already working to get to Teen Challenge. I talked to Wayne Dewsbury, the intake coordinator, and we were trying to work something out, but nothing was definite yet. So I started going to work for this guy. I got a paycheck. I told my dad every day that week, as soon as I get my paycheck, you've got it, you've got it, you've got it, you've got it. Paycheck came, where'd I go? It wasn't out of my system. I was still dependent on myself. I thought I was too weak to kick the habit because I've been doing it for too long. I thought I was a lost cause. I had to tell my dad that I went and bought more drugs, and that killed him. That killed him. A week later, I didn't have a choice. My mom picked me up. She said, you're going to Teen Challenge. Had my bags packed, everything else. Just, let's go to Greensboro. I got to Greensboro, and I was happy, man. I was happy. You can ask Anthony. Anthony even asked me one day, he said, why are you so happy you're in Teen Challenge? I was happy because I was out of that situation. I was happy because I couldn't call somebody and go down the road and get drugs. I didn't have that temptation in my life anymore. I could focus on what I needed to focus on. Teen Challenge provided a place for me to get away and do exactly what I needed to do, and that was seek after God with my whole heart. I had never done that before in my life, and I was ready to do it when I got here. And let me tell you, I've never looked back. I've never looked back. I graduated Teen Challenge in February, and I came on staff. And now I get to disciple these guys over here to try to give them encouragement, to try to give them hope, to try to give them direction in their lives just like the guys gave me when I came in. And it's a blessing. I wake up every day with a purpose. I wake up every day with a drive. And I'm not perfect, and these guys know I'm not perfect, but that's the beauty of it. They see another Christian struggling with the same things they're struggling with, but they know that there's hope. There's light at the end of the tunnel. We can be better than the day we were before, and that's the ultimate goal. At Teen Challenge, we wake up at 6 a.m., we go to bed at 10, and it's God all day long. All day long. Chapels, personal studies, how to become a Christian, living a godly life. We go to church services every Sunday. We get to go out and we get to tell our testimony. And that's the best part of it. To get up here and to be able to tell people that I was lost. I was so lost. But now I'm found. And I'm not going back to that life. I'm not going back to that prison. I'm not going back to those things that were holding me down. And the reason I'm standing here today is because of Jesus Christ. The reason that I have my family in my corner still to this day, now they never stop praying for me. They never stop pushing me to be better. But they see me now and they look at me and they say, there's my son. There's my brother. There's my grandson. We can laugh, we can joke, we can enjoy life like we're supposed to, and we're stronger because God brought us through those troubles. So I'm here today standing in front of you as a living testimony. If you're going through something in your life right now, depend on God. Depend on God. So many people I know, they get a little bit of turbulence in their life and they blame God and they run the other direction and say, I got this. Hey, none of us got this. None of us. The only reason we get through our daily life is God. The only reason I'm standing here tonight is because of God. God's given us all gifts. He's given me the gift of communication. And I want to use that to the best of my ability. I want to glorify God with my story. I want to go to the highways and byways and tell people what I've came through, what God's brought me through. And I want to do that for the rest of my life. I'm committed to the ministry. I'm committed to doing God's work. And I'll do anything to bring people closer to Jesus. but it's nothing I've done. It's all Him. I really appreciate y'all letting me share tonight. Thank you.